Okay, I call this Brookhaven Special Call Work Session of the Brookhaven City Council to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, Mayor J. Max Davis.
Here.
Councilmember John Park, District 2.
Here.
Councilmember Rebecca Chase Williams, District 1.
Present.
Councilmember Bates Madison, District 3.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Gebbia, District 4.
En route, I think
He's
he'll
not
be here at 6.
Okay. He's arriving later. We have a quorum, though. Thank you.
Okay. Opening remarks, don't have any. So the pre-special call meeting agenda review. That's
We have approval minutes for October the 28th and November the 4th. And then on our agenda are the second readings
Right.
of CHOA and also of the executive park.
And then, and we can come back and talk about that in just a minute, but I want to look at the, where do we get to non-annexation materials in the agenda? That's all that's on it, okay? Is that right?
Excuse me?
All on the agenda is all annexation,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Right, it's back on the work session.
So go back on the works.
Okay. I have a number of items on the agenda, one of which I left off, and I'd like to add that as we have 5 items right now, and I'd like to move item 5, revenue discussion, down to item 6 and create a new item 5, which is the batting pavilion.
Okay.
The first item is the Cherry Blossom Festival. As you know, you have heard Councilmember Williams discuss many times over the course of almost 2 years now about the idea of creating a signature event for the city, a tourism event, and the idea of cherry trees and a cherry tree festival came to be. Predicated on that Cherry Blossom Festival was the adoption of a cherry blossom, of the cherry tree as the official city tree. The council did move on that several months ago, and following that, the city solicited an RFP from event planners to assist us in planning what would be a tourism event. Blackburn Park was the park that was cited for this event. We did receive a few proposals. We interviewed a firm called the Nunn Group, who has quite a bit of experience in working in, with especially the City of Atlanta and Piedmont Park and events that they hold. There's been some question by council members as to the length of the event and to the cost of the event. The last discussion that I had, and the reason I have this on the work session agenda is I'm really looking for some direction on which way we go before we go too far and there's no turning back. And so the first order is, the idea of the Cherry Blossom Festival, if everybody's still on board with that. And number 2, it is the term of the festival. Originally, it was going to be a 5-day festival, actually 4 days and 1 extra night, a kickoff on a Wednesday evening. It has now been reduced to a Friday night kickoff to concluding on a Sunday early evening, late afternoon. Trees are required for the Cherry Blossom Festival, and there were 222 trees. We bid that out. We retained a landscape architect to do the overall plan and to work with the event planners. The landscape architect, his fee is approximately $4,500. The fee for the Nunn Group for the 3-day event is $39,000. This is the event planning. And the cherry...
For a 3-day event? Okay.
Right, starting Friday night.
All right.
And that is March the 27th, a Friday going through Saturday the 28th, and then Sunday ending on the 29th.
Could you explain how all this would be paid for and why it's, what is, how?
Yes.
Real quick.
The funds that are assigned to this are coming out of the tourism funds, the hotel motel tax. We are permitted by law to use 40% of all collection of hotel motel tax. The 60% that remains goes into our general fund. And the express purpose for the tourism dollars is to promote the city so that we get what's called in the industry heads and beds.
So if we get $1 million of hotel motel tax, 400,000 of it must be spent on tourism,
Correct.
promotions, events?
Promotion, yes, promotions,
Okay.
events, staff.
What is the penalty for not doing that?
Well, we have to return the money.
Okay.
Or we need to reconsider whether or not we have a hotel motel tax.
Right, okay. All right. And for what types of, I mean, explain exactly what things are permitted and what are not permitted to spend.
Okay,
You can't go
well-
in the general fund with that 40%, I understand that. But what things are required, what are allowable and acceptable things to be spending that money on, and what are some that might not be allowable?
Okay. The most critical telling point or the way to answer a question on whether or not something is eligible is if the event, the promotion itself, will bring people from out of town and that they would spend the night in our hotels. So
Outside
that
the
if-
boundaries of Brookhaven?
Correct. Well, even outside the boundaries of the metro
Metro,
area.
okay.
Because you want to look at how far out do you go where it's still a day trip and people could return home. So on every event that we've had, we advertise either in the Savannah newspapers, Birmingham, Montgomery. We have advertised in Macon, even Valdosta and Chattanooga. We've done that. Just so that we could take a look at, what's close enough but far enough away that people couldn't return on the same day and would choose to spend the night in one of the hotels. Now, for the promotion of that event, we always promote the hotels, come to this event and stay at one of our, 14 or 13 hotels. And then many times, Mike Vesio, depending on the event, like he is with the Cherry Blossom event, he's working with the hotelers to get a special discounted rate for this event. So if you're calling in to make reservations, or even on their website, we expect that they'll include this. If you're coming for the Cherry Blossom event, there probably will be a code. You plug that in, and then you get a discount on the hotel room.
From your expertise and experience in dealing with hotel, motel tax dollars, are the dollars that are being proposed to be spent on this festival in line with what the law requires?
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay. All right. Continue, please, if there's more.
All right. So what I want to be sure of, and I appreciate the patience of our city attorney, he has looked at the non-group contract now 3 times, and it's been revised 3 times regarding pricing. So we are, I think, at the point where we're at the price for what would be a meaningful event that we could really call out for as a tourism event. So we're down to this 2 full days and 1 night, Friday through Sunday. And the contract has not been signed, so it's not been signed, nor has the contract or the work been let. But that is at $39,000. So I'd like to have some discussion with you all as to, if you're on board with this, then I'll know how to proceed and move forward. If not, I don't want to sign a contract, and I don't want to
Right.
engage these planners. The trees, however,
That's going to come at the council meeting, or you just want a sense now?
a sense now, because the contract amount is within my purview to sign.
From what you've said and what it's for, I mean, we have to spend the money. If we don't, we have to give it back if we don't spend it on the things we're supposed to spend it on. So that, I mean, this is as good as any, and I think it's, I know that it's, what could be a signature event.
Right.
Among a couple other.
Right.
That we'd like to do and think up. So-
Exactly. Yeah, it's
So-
not the only event that we would want to have for the city, so you're right.
So I'm in favor of it, of doing that.
Okay.
I have some questions, actually. How much is that 40%, what is the actual dollar amount of that 40% annually?
It's about $400,000.
Okay.
Just a little bit over. It really depends on the collection rate. We budgeted 1.2 million. We're on track with that. We still are waiting for receipts for the month of October, and then, of course, we're collecting for November and December. So we should hit it right about 400,000, maybe 410 or 380.
Okay. And the 39,000 is for basically event planning, just labor to make calls and order everything and,
Well, it's to do a number of things. It's to attract the right vendors. They're looking at an arts and crafts show for Saturday and Sunday. They are looking at, bringing in food vendors. So the arts and crafts portion of it will be with tents or types of pavilions or some kind of structure that they would sell to bring that in. And the idea is to create these fees to offset the cost. So what we're looking to do is be revenue neutral on the expense for this event. The other thing that they're going to do is work with major corporations to get sponsorships. We're looking to at least have a headliner sponsor and then probably some sub-sponsors to that. The sponsorship fees could be anywhere from $10,000, $5,000, or even up to $50,000. The issue is, and part of this going back and forth on a 5-day event to a two-day, one-night event is when you're pitching the idea to a major corporation, they're looking at the advertising that they're getting. Is it worth it? A large corporation, it's not unheard that they would give a sponsorship of $50,000 or $100,000, but that might be for a full week event. So they're looking at what would the cost of advertising and normal media cost them versus having their name on a stage for a full week and on menus or flyers or what kind of marquees that the event would have. So we need to be realistic here that now that we've moved it from 5 days now down to just the shorter time period, I don't know if we'll get the $50,000 or the $100,000, but I do think that it's a long enough term that, we will get some major sponsorship. But that's their job to go out and solicit that.
And if there's no sponsorship, what would be the cost in terms of, there's a lot of, I've had a little bit of experience with this. There's a lot of, you got to pay, $8,000 to $10,000 for police. You got to pay for renting the tents and all those things.
Correct.
What if we're short on sponsors, who would cover that shortage?
That would come out of the hotel motel tax.
And that could be, from my experience, anywhere from, $30,000 to $40,000
It
per
could be.
day.
Yeah.
So
it
that's just
and-
my concern.
Right, and it really depends on the intensity of the activities during those days, because there's some of the ideas that they've come up with, and understand, there's been no planning that's been done yet, only a pitching of ideas of what could take place. There's been talk about a 5K road race. There's been talk about working with our chamber on that they'd like to participate and have a taste of Brookhaven. I'm not sure they're going to want to have it on site where we are, but it might be an ancillary event that they'll help promote. They're talking about like a pet parade and some other activities that'll all be surrounded with the arts and crafts. So depending on what is going on, it will also dictate the officers' time and how many officers will be there, parking attendance, and getting, managing all of that. So you're correct.
And so the concern I have is that if the city takes over event planning and managing and all that, we have a lot of doers in the community, a lot of people that want to be involved, that, want, whether it's for fundraising for a charity or just basically an ego trip, they want to feel good about they built something.
Yeah.
My concern is that we're crowding out those people if we just take care of everything. And so the question I have is, do we want to do that? Do we want to basically take care of all the planning, or are there people out there? And this is a question, this isn't a demand, this is a question more than anything. Are there people out there that would be willing to do a public-private partnership to bring this about and kind of be, rather than a Brookhaven thing, be a partnership and a community thing? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely, because this event cannot run by itself with two persons that are, planning the event. However, though,
I don't think the parks groups will be involved.
yeah, right. I
obviously.
mean, there's always room for volunteers, and we would want the volunteers absolutely there, whether they're greeters or they're parking, attendants telling people which way to go, or maybe even some might be crosswalk guards, whatever that might be, or, just, walking around the event and making sure people know where they're going and what's about to happen. One thing in my experience, in working with events similar to this, it's absolutely critical to engage the public and have them involved. but you really have to have somebody directing the work, because volunteers sometimes don't show up, and we have to be sure we have the backup plan, and we have to have somebody dedicated to be sure that they are reaching out to corporate sponsors, that they are working with a list of a known entity, that they know that there's a certain group of artists that make their rounds and where they are in visiting different events and capturing them. So that part is critical to get the people there for the event, to get the headliner show, which is whatever group is decided, and that's predicated on how much sponsorship is raised.
Let me jump in and ask a
yeah.
question about that, because that's a good point. So if you're talking sponsorships, it's not length of time, it's about number of people. It's about how many people are going to see it and how many, eyes are going to be on their name. So included in that budgeted amount that you talked about, the $39,000, is there advertising in that number? Or is that, sorry, is that just the management fee?
That's just the
Just management.
management and the orchestration of the event.
Does
What's
it include any
unfortunate-
of the cost,
Yeah,
the
that's-
hard
that's what-
costs of the
Like
tents
security or
police
anything like that?
security?
No,
No?
it does not. I mean, it anticipates it, of course, but here is the chicken or egg position that we're in right now. We have not released the event planners because there's no point in doing that if we don't have an event. I can't answer all of your questions, which are excellent questions, to the point of how many officers or what's the level of attendance that we can expect, what's the headliner event, who are the arts and crafters, because we've not released the event planners to start working on that. What other activities will shoehorn into the event, the 5K road race, the pet parade, maybe a toddler race, or who knows, or part of a taste event that could be signature cherry desserts or drinks or whatever that might be.
I think John is on the right path with the discussion about the public-private partnership. I mean, if we talk about the money being allocated, the right approach, I think, for the city is, because this is a first-year thing, you're going to, it's something the city wants to have occur. I think the city's willing to invest in making this thing occur. But if we could put that $40,000 out there as sort of a guarantee of expenses, so to approach it from the standpoint of, if this were a private company who were coming in and saying, look, I want to put on the Cherry Blossom Festival, city's going to guarantee 40 grand or something in expenses, and then as a private company, I can say, look, if I can make the numbers work to cover my cost for everything and make more than the 40 grand, then that company potentially can make a profit off of it. And that would be the only reason I think that anybody would want to be involved with it if you're a private company. So rather than simply paying someone to put this on, we're simply providing the incentive to come out there. Now, I mean, for the events that we've seen in the public arena that are put on, most of the time they are put on by private enterprises. And in this case, I think we're sweetening the deal, and that we're willing to somewhat put a guarantee out there. I don't know if I think that is completely changing the dynamics of what the proposed plan is. But, if we're opening this for discussion, I think that we should consider that as a possibility.
Well, and I appreciate those comments. I just will caution you, we are pretty much nearing the end of November, and we're talking about a March 27th kickoff. We have very limited time left to not only start planning the event as to where things will be laid out in conjunction with the landscape architect who is laying out where the trees should be, so that we can make sure people are walking the path and enjoying what the purpose of the event is, and to work with the motor coach industry, these professional tour groups, to make sure that we're on their calendar, that they come into the city. The last thing I want to do is bring motor coaches in and there's really nothing going on, and they ride by and they see the the Blossoms. You know,
Well,
I'm-
that's my point,
Yeah,
is
right.
the money should go towards advertising rather than,
Well,
you know,
and with what
event
I'm
planning.
hearing, and I'm just going to throw this out, because I don't want a failure for the city on this. My point in saying that we are really nearing, we're nearing a point of no return. I mean, we either move forward or we stop, and if we stop, then I would say, let's use the event planners to plan something for in the future, because if you're saying to have a public-private partnership, I have nothing to sell to the private side to say, this is what I'd like you to buy into. There has to be a plan. We've been trying to engage the Nun Group since October, and they've been held off, held off, held off. The trees were held off to a point that they were dug up out of the ground, and we were obligated. So the trees are coming, whether there's a festival or not, and, they
Let
can
me say,
still be.
let me just say, part of the restrictions on the funds from the hotel motel, I mean, you have to spend them on events like this, and to get something going, I think it's like seed money. We kind of we have to get something started, and I think in the following years, you can, once there's shown some success and there's a market for it, then you start getting more private companies coming in to want to, make their own cash in on it, and our expense becomes less. I think that, and we need to volunteer. We need to have our volunteer coordinator coordinate with the parks and get and do some of those. Make sure that there is a big volunteer element to it. And I've been a champion of that for a long time. I'm glad we have something rolling in that section. But so their fee is $39,000 for simply management. That doesn't include anything else. It's just a straight fee. Does not broken down into anything else.
Yes, it is. Part of the $39,000 includes, inclusive of the $39,000 is a $4,000, which is the sponsorship development fee. So that's, putting the marketing and the packaging together to
Okay.
get in front of these corporations. So, they're showing kicking off December 1, and then they have the month of December. There's a $6,000 estimated charge for that month, and then $33,000 from January to the end of the event in March.
Just for planning and preparation and.
Right,
Okay.
right.
If you remember when we reviewed in a meeting previous to this, the scope of their work, as I understand it, Marie, correct me if I'm wrong, is a lot of what they do is mobilize the volunteers, because no event of any size can go on without volunteers. So part of their expertise and mandate is to, in fact, utilize the volunteers who are ready, willing, and able. I mean, if anything, I've been having the Friends group saying, well, what is going to be our role? What can we do? We want to know. Because John is absolutely right. We have a lot of people who want to help, and we will need them. But we need them to get on board to plan the festival, to design the site, to get the contracts with the artist and the vendors so that we've got, artisans and things that people want to see, to decide on the concerts and the, whether it's choral groups or a big band that's coming. Their mandate is to, line up all those events. In terms of the advertising, as Marie said, we generally like to advertise in a lot of out-of-town papers as well, but as I understand it, most of the local advertising comes back in kind in advertising as sponsorship. I know, just from my experience at the Crier, we sponsor the annual Dunwoody Arts Festival, and our contribution is to provide all the advertising and a big printed guide the weekend before. The Reporter newspapers does the same thing. The AJC does the same thing. So I don't know that you'd have, it's not all dollars laid out in terms of advertising. And you also get that same kind of in-kind promotion from radio stations and even TV stations. But until we get this team on the ground working, we're not making any headway. So I'm kind of sorry that we're down to the wire here on getting them going, because they've been anxious, they've been ready to go since, October.
So this is from what I've heard and what I've experienced, this is my view. For an event of this size, $39,000 for management is actually not that bad. in terms of what it costs. And, my concern about crowding out, it sounds like there are a lot of people that will be engaged. And the idea being is that once this festival matures, over the years, eventually we won't need an event planner. It'll just be a machine. It'll just go on and on and on. If we were to do this purely with volunteers in the 4 months we have remaining now, we might as well not bother because it's not going to happen.
I agree.
It's just not going to happen. I mean, for Soccer Fest, there were 8 people dedicated to it, probably 15, 20, 30 hours a week, probably 40 hours a week towards the end for 6 to 8 months, starting at 6 months to put together a one-day event. So there are 2 suggestions that I have and that I think would help make this successful. I like the fact that it's been pared down to just a weekend. If you make it a one-day event, I think it kind of loses its ability. One is nothing attracts sponsorships more than a charity. And, when we were doing Soccer Fest, every other breath was, by the way, this is for blood cancer research. There are plenty of charities out there. CHOA is an example. And the other suggestion is that we really get on the event planners so that they don't do everything. There are volunteers and there are volunteers. There are volunteers that just show up, get a free T-shirt. And there are volunteers that live the festival and basically it's their baby. And I would want to, for those of us that are involved and as a city, really set the direction to the coordinator saying, we don't just want you to coordinate, we also want you to consult and mentor the people because there are plenty of templates, but they're just, in anything you need methodologies and templates. And I think if we focus on that as well as possibly the charity aspect, I think it could go off. But if we were to not hire an event planner and just go with just a straight up volunteer effort to recruit them, to vet them, and to actually get it done, I just don't see it happening. And if we were to go that route, we might as well cancel. That's my view.
I'm going to ask one question, and I'm sorry if you've already covered it, but it's just for my edification. Have we discussed what cost there would be beyond the $39,000?
We did.
Well, I mean, besides the trees, I'm talking about for the event.
We did, and my answer was, I don't have an answer right now because I don't have a full event plan from the event planner, so I don't know from the standpoint of how many police officers I may need or what other additional costs such as advertising would be necessary. Some of the advertising, we would hope that, through sponsorships, through
Would be in
newspapers,
kind.
that we would get that, but we know that needs to be done. We know that there is a cost there. I can't give it to you because we've not engaged the event planners that I can give you some kind of certainty.
Don't you think, though, that we can get that information pretty quickly once they come on board?
Huh.
I mean,
Yeah.
I would think that we would want to ask them for a required budget that would keep us updated, and at the point that we think the costs are too much or going over, I mean, we have a right to say, hold back, or whoa. No, because, I mean, the last thing I want is for huge kind of cost overruns, or, I mean, I really hadn't anticipated that it would cost that much beyond their fee, because it was my understanding they were they were paying for the tents and the tables and some of these other things that, were just the kind of nuts and bolts.
Well, the vendors are, those that are coming in to display their wares
Right.
and sell them are paying for, those structures.
Right.
There-
So
there-
I
so
think
there's
a lot of
fee.
it is going to be self-supporting, if you will, in terms of the fees that they will charge for artists or crafters to come in. What I don't have a lot of knowledge about is if we hire, bands or whatever. I mean, I envision that we'll have a lot of like local choral groups or bands or international or JMAX,
Well, no,
But we will have some headline
Gotta have a
groups.
Well, we have to have a
No,
headliner,
I'm
and
just-
the event planners have talked about that, because that's, if you're asking, corporate America to sponsor and have quite a large sponsorship fee, then that needs to be, on the stage where the headliner event
Right.
is, the kickoff concert, which is expected to be Friday night or a Saturday night.
Well, and I think there are two things there. I mean, the reality is they're going to be looking for direction from us about what the event is. So we know that we're going to have an arts festival on Saturday, Sunday. I think that's the plan. And then if we also have music stages, well, you don't want those right next to your arts festival, but they can work well in concert. But at what points during the day do you have the music part? Is it all day, or is it just?
Do it like Brookhaven, I mean, like the
just at
Brookhaven
end?
Arts Festival did it. It was,
Yeah.
there would be kind of times they would have it.
Right, and I think that giving them that direction about, well, maybe the first year it's, not so much geared on the music, but it's more about the festival and the arts and so the music part's just at the end. Then they can have a framework that they can adjust all of their budgets. And I agree, I think that they're, to get the event started, it is going to take a push and an investment from the city. And we know that outside of the costs that we're dealing with that are coming out of the hotel motel tax, as Rebecca pointed out in her presentation, this has a tremendous economic impact for the businesses in the community outside of the hotel. So there is a tremendous benefit, not just because it's a great festival and a good idea, but there's a cash reality, an economic reality to the benefit. But I think that, getting that rundown on the numbers as quickly as we can from the event planners, so that we know what the actual hard costs are, and then they can come and say, look, we're going to try for X number of dollars of sponsorship to cover these costs, but at the same time, we'll be aware of the fact that, look, these are the costs proposed of the festival.
Would it be appropriate to have them, come present at a work session periodically over the next, month or two to kind of give us updates and their plans and just
It
make
would
sure
be
we're all on
them,
the same
but
page?
It would also be our tourism manager
Well, exactly.
who's going
yeah.
to be doing that. I mean,
But we do
ultimately-
have to let the contract before any of that
Right.
can begin, correct?
So, this is my conclusion, what I'm hearing. We had to buy the trees, I agree, regardless of whether we're having the event. They had to get planted because the clock ticks, and every year it just gets better. And I'm very happy that it's a 2-day. I think we are enhancing our opportunities for guaranteed success on this, which it has to be. I do agree with John's position. We've talked about it individually, privately, and somewhere down the road, it probably would be good to have the volunteers really involved. But from the get-go, first year, we need to have this investment made in the professional support, especially given the time element. It is a seed planting for us, no pun intended, as far as trees being planted, but because I think it'll just keep getting better every year. We will turn it into the machine, that it will be just repeated. I think the idea of having a charity involved is a driving force, and I'm going to throw this out there just for consideration. In a conversation not too long ago with the historic Brookhaven, who sponsored the police golf outing, we've come to the conclusion that we can't do that every year. Then they're looking for another function that they can get behind to raise money for the police department. So maybe this is an annual event. We could present it to them and see if this is something they'd be interested to do it for that purpose. Just throwing it out there, just for food for thought.
Yeah, I mean, the police or, you might need a sort of a more named charity or, I don't know. Probably.
I like the Cho idea.
I like Cho.
No, I didn't
Joe's
hear.
good.
I don't think I heard that.
The children's
Okay.
healthcare thing.
Sure.
They gave the nod that they would be appreciative.
I think there's a lot of worthy groups, and we had actually talked about any extra money that would be raised could in fact be returned to our parks, or could go towards, a fund that starts buying more park space, or part of the tree fund. I mean, not that we're a charity, but, we have a lot of needs that I think our citizens would support as well. So I would welcome that discussion.
Mhm.
But I think tonight we need to give Marie some direction on whether to go ahead and sign this contract.
Go for it.
Okay.
Do you need a vote on that?
You can't vote.
Got
I'm
it.
not hearing anything negative to stop it.
It's in her purview, she could do
Right.
it, but she's just asking,
Right.
if there's a lot of opposition to it.
It's an item for which there's a source for that's been appropriated, so it's within her
Within her budget.
within her discretion.
Purvey's, got it.
I would just add, to kind of conclude this discussion, I do have the preliminary planning plan that was just delivered this afternoon from Carrie Blind, and it's a combination of Yoshinos, which are generally the white, big spreading, bigger blossom, and Kwanzan, which are the pink tree. So it's going to be a combination, I
What
think.
about autumnalis?
The nursery didn't have the autumnalis in the quantities that we wanted, over time maybe. But we've also have enough trees that we had always set aside some planning for each park. And so last night, Carrie went to, or Tuesday night, the same night we were at council meeting, Carrie went and presented the plan and met with the park, PARC group, and has now worked with each one of the major parks to get all of their recommendations as to where they might like their grove of trees. And the communication I've had is that they welcome it, they're excited about it, they've been involved in designating where the trees want to go. And I think that's just going to kind of spread the good cheer around.
Excellent.
One last little thing I want to say is that the Chomp and Stomp, I don't know if you know about it, is a event that it's held every year in Cabbagetown. And they raise $80,000 a year for their park. The money goes towards the park. And in turn, the reason why there are so many committed people, the expertise for Soccer Fest actually came from Chomp and Stomp. And there are about 12 volunteers who love the park, who are motivated, and as a result of that, are involved in the event. And when I heard the figure of the cost of the event planner, this is kind of an opportunity and a cautionary tale at the same time. That's honestly not enough. They lowballed us on that one. I will just say that. And
Well, you haven't negotiated with Maria either.
and absolutely, one of the things that I'm going to be saying to my neighbors is, hey guys, if we don't get involved and if we don't get behind this, if we don't have doers really get engaged, and there's going to be room because of the cost, it's just not going to be successful. And if we tie it to the park and money for the park, it could really motivate people, I think. And there are definitely doers that do that. So we can take care of two issues with one decision, I think.
And just as a last point about the tree plantings, I do think that in order to avoid any negative pushback from our parks, that we make sure that the parks are on board in every case, that they want them and that they're a part of them, and they know that they don't have to have the cherry trees if it's not in there. And so that's good that
Yeah.
they met.
And,
with park.
I've been meeting with the Friends of the Park and the park groups now for several months, and Kerry now has met, this is his second time he's met with them. But like I say, they've now gotten sign-off with them bringing in their own drawings or Google Maps and suggesting their sites of where they want and comparing it with Kerry just to get his expertise in terms of where's the best place to have the
Yeah.
most light and maybe that would be healthy for the trees, and also the advantage of seeing them when you arrive,
Yeah.
et cetera. So I think we've had very nice buy-in from the parks, and they know that they don't have to take them if they don't want them, but everybody seems to be excited about it.
I think it's the same thing we're going to be talking about on number 3, the Christmas tree lighting it, or the Christmas trees. Are we going to be talking about the Christmas trees
Yes.
in every park?
We're going to talk about, well, not
Because
every
that's the
park.
same thing. The feedback is,
right.
well, I don't know that I want a permanent Christmas tree. And, all it takes from the city is just engaging them and saying, look, do you really want it? And where do you want it? And then they can make that decision. Some people might just want it as a temporary. So, that's it.
All right. Next.
Okay, the next item is just an update and some discussion that I wanted to engage you all in for for your thinking as I'm preparing the 2015 budget. If you'll recall, in our current budget, 2014, there were funds set up under the city manager's department for studies, one of which was looking at the feasibility of addressing, Brookhaven city school system. And it went, that was the initial reason for the funds in the budget for which you approved, but it expanded from there with the firm of Edavat, and they came in and then their proposal, and I pulled their proposal just to be sure we had it. There was $30,000 that was funded in the budget for this express purpose. Their proposal went really beyond that, and I just want to caution you at this point that, one, we're nearing the end of the budgeted amount of $30,000, and I understand that this group, this consulting firm, intends to continue working. So I'm looking for some direction from the council. Is this something that you want to continue to fund? Because I have no idea what that amount may be, and I want to be sure that we're staying true to what the funds were to be to begin with. We were supposed to get that feasibility study, and I don't have it. I don't know if the council members received it. It is something I'm going to be calling them about, in the morning, because, one, I think we need to have that, and I'm sure you all would like a copy of what their findings are.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, the other was that they were to provide a report with recommendations and solutions for the improvement of Cross Keys High School and Woodward Elementary School, and I don't have that either. And I'm pointing these two out because I think what's happened was that the third item in their proposal is really what ended up being the primary and principal purpose of the work, and that was to prepare the petition for a cutting-edge city-sponsored STEM charter school. So if there is intent by this council to continue this, I really want to get a better understanding of what your expectations are, what your wants and desires are, and what you expect the deliverables to be. I've been notified by the group that they are now ready to file for their 501c3 status, and while that was made part of their proposal, I'm really questioning whether or not this is a function of local government as it is opposed to a function of this work and the consulting group themselves.
So I'll give you a little bit of take. I actually think it's one of the, good quality education options are one of the most important and vital things in a city to deal with. While it's not under the direct control of the city, it does affect our property values to a tremendous extent. And it is a very real situation that we have in Brookhaven, where we are in the DeKalb County school system, which has shown that they've had some difficulties with their schools and some of their governance issues in the past. We did, when we talked about doing this last year, was for primarily those three things, not just Brookhaven Innovation Academy, but also for addressing the, doing a feasibility study for the city of Brookhaven city school system. They have done a draft that I've seen once before in email, but I talked to them about it last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, and said, look, you've got to deliver this thing, particularly before the legislative session. So I know that they're working on that. The 501c3 application is intended to help this effort become self-sustaining on its own without cities' funding. To get that nonprofit status is important to be able to attract tax-free donations. I contend that this, as everybody knows, we were turned down by the state charter for the Brookhaven Innovation Academy this past September, but strongly encouraged to come back this year. The group, in order to do that, that will have a cost. I contend that having a second option for our public school options is extremely important. It's an initiative that I think will address one of the, address what is a very what is a known issue that we deal with in DeKalb County of having a school system that is in turmoil. So, and also we deal with the fact that we have a DeKalb County school system which in District 1, which is of their district, District 1, which is everything north of I-85, every single one of the elementary schools within that district is over 100% capacity, and yet the DeKalb County school system has zero funding ability to create new schools or capacity until the next SPLOST, which won't even come around for another 2.5 years. So, our kids, if they're going to public schools.
It's an economic development issue for the city.
It is very much an economic development issue, because if you are attracting new residents to the city of Brookhaven and they see the public school and it is increasingly filled with trailers, you're not going to feel very safe about locating your kids in those schools, regardless of the great education that the teachers are doing in there. So I contend that it is a very worthwhile investment for the city of Brookhaven to make. I do want to, I think that all three of these issues are still vitally important. I think the city still should continue to push for a city of Brookhaven school system. We do need to address the concerns of our other schools, and the majority of our city is a Chamblee cluster. So, we've heard concerns from people of Chamblee Middle and Chamblee High, and the concerns of, well, you're going to pull our kids out of those schools, and because of QBE funding, that's going to hurt their schools. This requires expertise in the education area that really is outside the scope of the knowledge base that we have internally. So I think that it's a smart investment to continue with investing in this. I would say that 30 grand as a budgeted amount for 2015 is an appropriate number. And I think at the end of the day, that will pay off greatly for the city of Brookhaven. And ultimately, the Brookhaven Innovation Academy, I think, will roll off after next year, become self-sustaining, and that effort will get its own legs and have to go out and find its own funding. The other efforts that this city that I contend we should continue to pursue is always have people to engage with our public schools here, because it's so vitally important when you talk about economic
Didn't we
development.
have some entreaties from some folks in Dunwoody about their effort for their city school system? I mean, they put funding towards that effort as well.
Right.
Did they ask about kind of?
Yeah, Dunwoody actually spent $50,000 just on the feasibility study alone, in their push to create a city Dunwoody school system. There has been some interest that if that city school system is not feasible, if it can't be achieved through the legislative process, you can convert your existing schools into state charter schools, and essentially have them converted from the existing system into a charter school, and that is a de facto city school system. So it provides an alternative to the legislative track, which actually is much quicker. And so that's what not only Dunwoody, but also we've had interest from Chamblee, Doraville, Clarkston. A lot of cities are watching what we were doing here, because they recognize that it is so important for economic development.
I agree with Bates that, in the mayor's comment, this is a significant effort on our part, and will have a major impact on economic development, but this is a long-term endeavor on our part. And I also want to, so continued investment, I'm in favor of continued investment in this, and I think $30,000 for the next round, unless we hear otherwise from Edivate. So we need to put this to them to confirm.
All right.
Because there are things that are going to be coming down the road as far as our compliance education on charter school governance. That's going to be probably part of this, and I'm not sure if there's a fee for it, but if it is, it should be included under this.
Just make sure we get the deliverables on the first one before we spend
Right.
on the second one.
But another thing about the deliverables on the first one, and I think it needs to be pointed out, the fee that we were paying for that was a phenomenal fee for the services that we got, compared especially what other cities pay for similar. And it was pointed out from Dunwoody, the Dunwoody example. But I do feel we got a great value for our 30,000. But if there were deliverables in there for 30,000 and we haven't received all of them, then we do need to make sure we address that.
Well, I intend to reach out to them, and the reason I'm bringing it up is we're nearing the end, and if they have completed the work that they have included, are you wanting to pay for them to incorporate?
Yeah, I mean, that's the linchpin about getting, pushing the bird out of the nest is getting them to a tax exempt status. The 501c3, $2,500 to get an accountant to file an IRS application for tax exempt status. Then they can go out and fundraise on their own. So
You've already got that
and-
budgeted. Isn't that part of the
Well, it's
30?
not.
And also, that was part of the 30 grand.
Well, it's not included in their proposal, so I just want to be
Right,
sure
right.
you
But-
all,
but it
it's not
was-
delineated.
Yeah, it wasn't delineated because we didn't, it just wasn't considered when the contract was done, but I have confirmed with them that that 2,500 was to come out of that $30,000 budget amount.
Okay.
So it's not in addition.
Well, if it comes out of it, there's no money left. They're done.
Yeah, and I think that's
Have you
that's what I've
engaged-
gotten from them.
Have you engaged them at all on this, on their status of where they are on this, from a deliverable standpoint?
I have, and
No, I'm asking Marie.
Oh.
No, I had a conversation with Glenn Delk about, I guess, a month ago, and I did talk with him about what his intentions were for next year, for budget year, because I was working on the budget, and he said he had no intentions for additional funds, but obviously, there's been more conversations than what I've had with him, and if there are, then if it's another 30,000, for your purposes, I want to be sure I'm clear on what they are doing with that additional money that is needed, separate from what they were originally tasked to do. I want to be sure that when the public asks, I can give copies of what they said that they would provide.
Right.
Particularly, I'm very interested in the Cross Keys and Woodward Elementary review, because that is critical to the Beaufort Highway Improvement Plan. And I have not
Yeah.
seen any evidence of that.
Yeah, they've done a number of things in that regard.
Okay.
In addition to just meetings with the Cabot County staff on that, and they
Okay.
they need to write that up. But,
Right, okay.
I would, I too think this is an important effort, and I love charter schools. But I'm increasingly having some concerns about whether the city council should be the governing body. We're being asked to go to a governing body governance boot camp on December the 10th. And I started thinking about this after a conversation with Tom Taylor, who was actually a little irritated at us all for this effort that we're doing, because he said the objections he gets from the smaller school system for his independent school bill are that they think the city council is going to become the school board in those cities, and they're all fearful of it because they just think that's not a good idea. So, I would like for us all to have a little bit fuller discussion about whether we all should be the governing board of the school. I mean, I didn't run to be on the school board. I support education. I think it's important. I agree it's in the city's interest. I don't know that that's yet another job that I'm prepared to completely take on. This is exactly the reason why the state charter, I think it's at the heart of why they turned us down. I think they too had questions about whether this was a good idea or not. I mean, as you know, our terms come and go, people will come and go. We all have a lot of time constraints. So I would just say, look, I think we should go forward, but I think we ought to have a more serious discussion about whether we're the
kind of a-
advisory board or the governing board, or
Kind
just
of a,
exactly how this is set up.
A line of authority, I mean, I wouldn't, a school system government, that wouldn't be appropriate for us. I mean, for a school, for us to be advisors or governors of that school, or be, some level removed from the actual people who are doing the day-to-day, I think we need to have a kind of a document or a paper on what we would be expected to do before we can agree to do that.
Yeah, and I
Well,
actually did.
We ought to be prepared to go to this boot camp and kind of learn what exactly are the full, because I was taken aback. I think we all were a bit, and I don't think we did all that great in our interview with them in terms of, are we prepared to take on all the roles of the governing board? I think we
One
stumbled.
question.
I think
Yeah, one question.
I think we stumbled on some questions, but I think.
Well, but so I did the research. Rebecca, we talked about this offline in a phone call, but I agree. I can tell you that when this effort started off, I never envisioned this mayor and council being the governing board. It just became that way because we were passionate about it. We were there. We were available. We were knowledgeable. I contend that, if it, my personal envision would be that the mayor and council would have designees, somebody who was really passionate about the education process, who actually would be there. And the mayor and council appointees were only to protect the investment of the city of Brookhaven that we are making in starting the school. So that if the board gets sideways and the charter management organization is not doing the right thing and the school is starting to fail, that there's some governance that the city, because of its investment, can get in there and say, look, we need to remove this charter management operator, or the board is not doing what they're charged to do. That's the only reason I think that link was established. But the two things I'd say is, one, yeah, I would, in doing the research, there are actually 8 county school boards which are also the same people as the county commissioners. They may be the city councilman too. I don't think they are, but it's the governing board of the school. It's the school board is the same people as the county commissioners. So the argument that the state used, that they've got concerns about, that
How
Brecht
well do
is
they
not,
work?
is this is not the first time that's happened in Georgia, and that's. I contend that the board will.
I'm just asking that we have a fuller discussion about it, because, we kind of jumped in it with full enthusiasm.
Right.
And I would just say that in the second year, as we go forward, let's sit back and really discuss about how this works, what our role is, what's the best use of our time and our effort. I get a lot of concerns in my district about whether, in fact, the BIA is pulling away from, why aren't you all just throwing your support behind the public schools instead of trying to go create something else? Or
Just look at the Druid Hills
Yeah.
charter cluster.
I
That's
think
right.
we can answer that pretty
Yeah.
easily. The one reason why we jumped in, I think, so quickly is because the key responsibility for the governance of this is being a policymaker. And if there's nothing we've learned over the last year and a half as council, it's to be, I think, pretty good policymakers. That being said, I do think your comment is appropriate. I think we probably need to have further conversation on this. And I do think participation in the governance board will help us in that conversation, minimally, and probably more importantly, even if we don't stay on board, it will help us evaluate what is going on with whoever is in the governance board. And this is an important issue, so
Hey.
just wanted to put those points across.
We got to really move on this agenda here.
I'm done.
All right, Christmas tree lighting at Briarwood Park, are we going to do that, or?
I think that's out,
Okay.
from what I read last night.
All right.
Okay, so we're moving on, that's out, and you've got a tree at Blackburn, and we're going to light that up, and that's going to be December the 11th, and more details to follow.
Okay, all right.
Giddy
All
up.
right.
Go ahead. Go ahead, John. Did you have something?
That's what I had, just giddy up.
Okay.
Okay, item number 4, there has been discussion among some of the council members and regarding a bike ride that was taken recently to look at the friendliness of the community's road networking system to bikes as an alternate mode of transportation. Out of that there have been a couple more meetings with interested citizens to talk about and advocate for a Complete Streets program. And I need to just hear some conversation from the rest of you to the point of, if you're willing to move forward and for us to continue to explore this, because some of the roads that we currently have, not all rights-of-way that we currently own, could accommodate a Complete Streets program.
Right.
However, if it is the desire, you can still state that is the desire. But one of the things in the last meeting that we had last week with the group of citizens that are advocating for this is the first thing that needs to be done is to develop a bike and ped plan, bike
Right.
and pedestrian plan citywide. And in that planning, we'll be able to ascertain, which road systems really are more that can
Appropriate.
accommodate this kind of a design and system. And
So
then
don't put the cart in front of the horse, but. I mean,
Correct.
I think that's a goal we want, but I think the bike and ped program needs to be
Right.
established
Okay,
first.
Well, I'm ready to launch that.
Okay.
That's going to be in the 2015 budget, and I just wanted to be sure we all understood that that's the first step.
Yes.
Towards achieving this.
All right?
Okay,
I just have one other comment. As much as I support biking, I can't remember the last time I was on a bike, but I used to enjoy it. But I would be scared to death to ride a bike down some of our major roads. The path, actually, I have ridden on before. I just don't want to get lost in the discussion, what I consider the number one issue to me, which is traffic.
Traffic.
And moving cars through the streets. We have tremendous traffic issues in this city, and I hope we're going to spend as much attention on trying to solve some of our traffic problems, moving cars, as much as we're talking about moving bicyclists and, along the roads as well. So I have some cautions about complete streets, only in that I think if you really, as I understand it, if you really provide the full bike lanes that are advocated, you're often taking up a lot of right-of-way and cutting into, people's front yards. I've seen that happen in some of the neighboring communities. So let's make sure we really know full well what we're adopting or that we understand it before we.
It's
Real
not,
quick, Joe.
it's not an either or, and in my perspective. We're fulfilling our mission statement of Brookhaven with various modes of
Right.
transportation.
Well, let's
So-
make sure we're looking at all modes, is
Well, I
all
mean,
I'm
this is the
saying.
first time we're looking at this, so, I'm just saying, I'm hearing you say it's an either or, that's what.
No, I didn't say it,
Okay.
Roy, did I say that?
No, but you're saying, let's make sure we're looking at something in lieu of something else. This is part of the mission statement where we're looking at multiple modes of modality, so.
All right, thank you. All right. Revenue discussion, how are we doing on revenue?
a batting pavilion.
Oh, bad.
Okay. The Murphy Candler League has come to the city looking for a partnership with the city on a batting pavilion, quite a large one, to the cost of $148,000. They want to put up $75,000. They want the city to match that with $75,000. As you all know, my threshold is $50,000, and we don't have it in our master plan because we don't have a master plan yet. So I wanted to bring this to your attention because a couple of things are triggered here if we move forward. One, it has to be bid, period, hands down. Not because, in addition, because it's beyond my threshold, but also because it's a public works project, and there are state laws governing public works projects and how they are bid and how they are advertised. But I think what this demonstrates more than anything, two things. One is that, we have good partnerships with groups in the city. And we had talked about this when we were working on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, that, we're looking for partnerships where you could accelerate or expedite an improvement if a group is willing to put skin in the game. So this certainly demonstrates that. The second thing that it demonstrates is that you'll see in the budget is that I am assigning funds in the budget for your review and approval to develop master plans in some of our parks. That's called out for in our work program and the Parks and Rec plan. And, we do need to move forward so that when we are given opportunities such as this, we can say, oh, yes, that's in the plan, let's move forward. So I'm just bringing it up for conversation, and if you have any comments on that before we move to the next item.
I'd like to see more of opportunities like this from all of our parks groups, and I know some of them are just getting started. I know that we're going to have one with Briarwood on their bathroom, but their funding fell a little bit short, so we just went ahead and took over the whole bathroom project over there.
Mm-hmm.
This is a project, last year or 2 years ago, the Murphy County League built a pavilion, about half the size, in one of the back areas of the park, and there's already, in the place where they want to put this one, there already is a batting cage area, and it would cover that area and more. But so as far as master planning, it really wouldn't interfere with any sports side master planning. This is something that's an appropriate area, and that's it's a need they have, and it will really help our Murphy Candler, the athletic side, at least for baseball, become one of the premier facilities in the southeast for Little League Baseball. It's a need that will, for tournaments, when people can come and they can have BP and soft toss and pitch and catch under a covered pavilion before their game. It's one of the things that people demand when they have a Highline tournament. So I'd like to consider this, but I'd like to hear other options for other parks and other partnerships as well. So, got anything, Joe?
I would just make a comment about, I think we have to consider the question of equity, what's really fair to our other parks and our other partners. I don't even know that we've put it out there that, the Murphy Candler Conservancy has raised a lot of money, but they're thinking and planning about what they want.
Right.
I think they personally would be very upset if we put 75 grand on the other side of the park before we've really spent any money on that side of the park. The Friends of Blackburn have been begging us for some lights just to walk safely across the place. I mean, there's so many unmet needs in our parks that if we start doling out 75 grand for a batting cage, without really looking at the larger picture and what's fair to all the parks, I think we'd be remiss.
What did you mean by your $50,000 threshold? What's that?
50,000 on contracts that I can sign. I can't sign.
Without our permission.
Okay.
That's her threshold. She can
Okay.
approve contracts.
Right, and it has to be a budgeted item before I can sign off on that. Otherwise, it has to come before council. And that's why I'm bringing it up.
Well, this will segue into the next item is.
Yes.
So, I mean, for end-of-the-year projects, what kind of revenue, or how are revenue projections looking now?
On the host, we are really looking forward to what the next payment will be at the end of this month, because that will tell us if our host dollars, as have been projected, will increase by the $1 million that we're all hoping for. We did budget $5 million, or $5.1 million, and we're expecting a little over $6 million, so that's another $1 million. We're not going to know until we get to the end. The final payment is in January, so, but we are tracking right now a little ahead of what we received last year. So I have some confidence that we're going to reach that goal as to what the county gave us a projection on. If we do reach that additional million, remember I told you on your list for paving projects that we had $438,000 assigned to that, and you had over $900,000 on the list. And I mentioned to you before about this hopeful extra $1 million that will come in with hosts, and that I would split it down the middle in order for us to maintain momentum on the paving projects, that we would just continue on down the list, because it would allow us to complete that $900,000 list. The other $500,000 would go to parks, and that I would come back to you all for additional projects. So this could fall into that.
All right. Any questions? All right, we need to adjourn this, and then we need to take about a 15-minute break, and then we'll start our meeting. So this.
Did you want to save the last item for another time?
What's the last item?
Revenue?
That's what I was just talking, that's what we were just talking about.
Okay, I thought you were talking about other revenue.
No.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. All right. Is there a motion?
I move that we adjourn work session.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of adjourning work session, signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Work session is adjourned. We'll be back for the regular meeting in about 15 minutes.